G'day, welcome to the Essential Oil Science series, video number 6, from nose to brain. I'm going to go over some chemistry, the chemistry of this guy here, wintergreen, and last week's experiment, and then present a new experiment. So, the other day in a restaurant, my son was asking for shrimp. Of course, here in Australia, we don't say shrimp. Despite, who was it that said throw another shrimp on the barbie? We would call a shrimp a prawn. In America they say guys and gals, we would say blokes and sheelers, at least according to the Outback Steakhouse. Instead of y'all, Aussies use the very grammatically incorrect use guys. So I've always been amused by the different response to this guy here, oil of wintergreen, in the US versus Australia. Typically in the US we get this response, yum, and it's described as a sweet smell actually, whereas in Australia and Britain you'll get this response, yuck. Alright, so what is it that gives wintergreen this smell? That causes such a discrepancy between us. It's methyl salicylate, and as the ATE ending, if you remember from last week's video, what that indicates is that it's an ester. And this is interesting, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carbons, yet it's considered a monoterpene because it's close enough to 10. What is it that I've drawn over here? Well, what I've drawn is the reason why wintergreen comes with this childproof lid. Methyl salicylate, once it gets into the body, a lot of it at least, will turn into this stuff here, salicylic acid. And salicylic acid is essentially what's in aspirin, and it's what aspirin decomposes into. So, as you know, you can overdose on aspirin. People have done it and they've gotten really sick and died, and it's because methyl salicylate turns into salicylic acid in the body. You can also overdose on this stuff, and kids have done that and died. Us as humans, we would need to drink, as adults, sorry, kids are humans too, we would need to drink probably 2 or 3 bottles of this in order to get sick to the point that, you know, we could die. So you can take it internally, but just don't overdo it. That's the take-home message there. So interestingly, we're talking about the sense of smell last week, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as time goes on. This has such a strong odor, and the one that divides us, Americans and Australians, whereas this is completely odorless. And what's the difference? Well, the only difference is, this is getting really messy, is this carbon here. There's a carbon there, whereas it's missing from salicylic acid. And this has a smell and this doesn't. So interesting, think about that. Alright, so last week's experiment, you were diffusing lavender during stressful periods, and don't know what happened with you guys, but it was very interesting for me. I expected rainbows and butterflies, everybody would feel peaceful, and bedtime would be amazing. We'd want to do it again. But what I found was I was still getting frustrated. Kids were still getting frustrated, but it was sedated. It was all at a lower level, so it never got to the point where I would explode at the kids, like I might sometimes. So it just sedated the whole experience, but I was still having similar feelings, just at a lower level. So it was interesting. Love to hear what you guys found. Right, so the rain is starting to come down. We've had a wet old winter. So what's happening there? That lavender oil with its linalool, which is getting in through the lungs, into the lungs, and there it's exchanged into the blood and then up into the brain in the usual way. So in that way it's similar to applying it to the skin. What I've always been curious about, because I've heard claims that, oh, actually one of the quickest ways for an oil to get into the brain is through the olfactory nerve, and I assumed, as the clever neuroscientist that I am, that people were just making that up. Or they'd misheard this concept that an oil tickles these receptors and then sends a message to the brain, and assumed that the oil itself gets into the brain through the olfactory nerve. So I've done some research on this. It turns out there's a whole area of medicine looking into this right now. How to get drugs in through this kind of back door, this door that avoids the blood-brain barrier. For example, progesterone. You can put progesterone in the nasal cavity here, and within 2 minutes you have significant amounts of progesterone piling up here in the limbic area of the brain, which is what the olfactory nerve is connected to. So progesterone, let's take a look at it. It has 20 carbons, has a bunch of hydrogens and a couple of oxygens attached to it. So it's very similar to the monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes in essential oils. So if progesterone can make it through that back door, then my assumption is that essential oils can as well. So if we're diffusing essential oils, we're getting a small amount in the nasal cavity, and an even smaller amount will make it up through that olfactory nerve into the brain. So that's new knowledge for me. And all right, I'm going to have to explain next week's experiment inside because it is pouring with rain and I'm getting very wet. So I'll catch you in a second. All right, so this is better. This week's experiment will be looking at how much or how efficiently oil is exchanged from air to blood through the lungs. First off, take an oil, breathe it in through your mouth. So take a deep breath, hold your breath for about 2 seconds, and then breathe out through your nose. What you should notice is that when you breathe it out through your nose, you can tell what oil it was that you just smelled, because you can smell it as it comes out. Do the same with your nose. Breathe in through your nose, hold your breath for 2 seconds, then breathe out again through your nose, and you'll find something very interesting. Try it out. What I find is you cannot smell that oil when you breathe it out again. So that's just something fun to try. This week's experiment is related to that. You're going to take a set of oils, let's say a set of 4 to 8 oils, have them sitting down in front of you. You close your eyes and mix them around. Then you'll grab an oil, bring it up to your mouth with your eyes still closed, take the lid off, breathe it into your mouth, hold your breath for 2 seconds, then breathe out through your nose and see if you can guess what oil it was that you just smelt, and then you can take the bottle and check whether you're right or not. And do this 4 or 5 times and see how accurate you are. And then do the same thing, but this time breathe in through your mouth, hold your breath for 30 seconds, and then breathe out through your nose and see if you can tell what oil it was that you'd breathed in. If you don't get an effect, if it's just as easy to tell after 30 seconds as it was after 2 seconds, then try 45 seconds, Just make sure you don't die. I would feel bad if you did. Avoid cold and hot oils because they will give a hot and cold thing which will give away what oil you've just smelt. So stick with the non-hot and non-cold oils. Alright, and put comments down below. I will talk to you next week. Thank you.